Hello and welcome in to the Next Gen podcast for the first time now with Bluff City Media. I'm your host, Bryson Wright, and very proud to announce that starting today, we got a co-host for the Next Gen podcast, my guy, Alex Winton. You know, he was on the pod before. Moving over to Bluff City, got to have a consistent guy, and who better to have than one of my good friends, one of the best follows on Grizzlies Twitter. Alex, how you doing today, man?
Doing all right, man. Like I said earlier, I appreciate the opportunity, man. It was cool being on the podcast last time, so now being on it every week basically every week, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be cool. Yeah, I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
Yeah, as Ja Morant said in the playoffs last year, we are going to have some fun. It's definitely going to be fun having you on here for the rest of the week and everything, or for the rest of the season and all that. So it's going to be dope. But starting out, we got to talk about the last two games. Grizzlies just had a back-to-back against the Lakers with no LeBron, and then against the Rockets, who are tanking for Victor Wembanyama. But regardless, just beat the number one Nuggets also at home before that. It's good to see them kind of get back on track, because before the All-Star break, you know, they had that stretch where they were kind of up and down, mostly down for like 10, 15 games. I think they were 5-10 in their last 15 going into that All-Star break. 3-1 since then, and on a 3-game winning streak, looking to kind of continue that as they go on to this road trip that's coming up. But I want to start with that Lakers game, because we got to start with the Ja Morant 28-point third quarter, because I don't know. It's so, like, not to say that you get used to it, like you do kind of get used to it, but just knowing that you got a player that you can just throw him out there. Like, there's some games where you can just throw him out there and he's just going to decide that you're going to win the game. Like, that's basically what I saw. Like, in the third quarter of that game, Ja was like, we're not losing today. Shannon Sharp already talked all that trash the last time. Like, we're not doing that again. So he just had to go out there, came out after halftime, and he locked in like 20. It felt like 28 in a row. It might not have been 28 in a row, but it felt like 28 in a row. I think Luke Kennard did hit a three somewhere in there. But yeah, it was just crazy to watch that second half. The whole team played way better.
Yeah, no, it was Ja again, because he was struggling too. I think he started out, if I'm not mistaken, it's like 3 of 15 in that first half. It was something crazy. Like, I mean, now to be fair, nobody shot well that game. Like, that first half was like very ugly bad. I think I tweeted it. I said, in the mud hoops, like in the mud, like you shooting low 30s.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody has a flow offensively. Like, that's the type of game it was in the first half. And I was like, well, like because Jaren, I think, had a real rough half in terms of, like, he couldn't get a bucket. I think Ja really could. He was getting shots, but he couldn't score. Bane was kind of struggling. Like, nobody was really had a flow. So for Ja to come in that third quarter, he really, like, again, he got back to what his bread and butter was, which is the floater. Because for
Mm-hmm.
whatever reason, sometimes he'll just abandon it. Like in that Philly game, it felt like he had kind of abandoned that floater and just getting in. Like, it seemed like he was just trying to go to the rim, not looking to score, more so looking to get a foul. But in that third quarter against LA, he took what the defense gave him, and I'm pretty sure it was like maybe 3-4 straight possessions where he got like a floater. Then it was like another layup, like a reverse layup. Like, that was a special third quarter.
Oh, and
Special.
this is the other thing, right? You talk about 28-point third quarter, highest scoring quarter in the NBA this season, including the two 71-point games. And he didn't hit a three-pointer either. Like, it was all two-pointers. Like, the longest shot that he had was a 15-foot floater. And it's like, at some point, if you're looking at it from the Lakers' point of view, it's like, how are you just going to keep like, they didn't do anything special. Like, they really just kind of let Ja continue to get to the rim, and it got to a point to where, which I think that we saw a little bit more of that last year, where there were some games where he would just come in and it's like, well, if they're not going to stop me, then I'll just take it to the hole every time. And that's kind of what it felt like in that third quarter. He kind of realized, like, there's nobody that can stop him one-on-one. Like, they got some good defenders. Like, Jared Vanderbilt's a good defender. You know, they added Malik Beasley too, but you see Malik Beasley's on this poster back here too. So it's like, he doesn't have a great kind of history of guarding Ja either. So it's like, they got good defenders, but they just didn't have anybody that could stay in front of him, especially once that second half came around.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the thing really, when you're in that mode, when a player of his caliber is in that mode, it don't really matter who you throw on them. Like, they could have thrown, I'm trying to think of who their best defender is perimeter wise. Maybe you could throw Reeves, you could throw Rui, you could throw Dennis. Really didn't matter who you threw. Troy Brown, it doesn't matter. It really didn't matter at that point. He's gonna get by him. He was focused because nobody could really score. So that, especially in a game like that where you need every point matter, like every point matter, because we're always gonna defend. I don't worry about that. It's about can we get enough points, and that third quarter kind of basically changed the momentum of the game. Because I was like, if they're run away from taking control of the game because they weren't really in control of that game the whole first half. But once they really got that run, because like you said, I think a Kennard 3 was in. Yeah, I think Kennard hit a 3 during that run too. Like that's when I felt like, okay, we kind of got control of this game a little bit, at least going into the fourth.
Yeah, nah, I definitely feel the same way. Like I feel like they had control of it going into the fourth. They did lose a little bit of that control in the fourth, like they always do, I feel like. And I think that's just because, Ja doesn't play the beginning of the fourth. They played Jaren at the beginning of the fourth, though, and he did help a little bit, but I still feel like, they got to get him more involved, like, throughout the game. But it was it is a tough matchup for him because I know that he had Anthony Davis down there with him. I know he dunked over him, but, like, most of the game, it's not, which that's the best non-Ja Morant dunk that the Grizzlies have had in a minute. I'll say that.
Yeah,
you could say some of those Brandon Clark lives, but that was ferocious, and I love seeing that from Jaren. But he did have some struggles, especially in that first half. But he bounced back in that second half, like Ja did. With that big putback dunk, I feel like that was kind of like that was like a statement kind of dunk, especially because it's over AD. I know AD wasn't turned around and all that, but that still felt like a statement dunk, number one on SportsCenter, all that. So it was awesome. And then just continuing to do what he does on the defensive end against a player of that caliber, having another 5-block game and all that. So it was just awesome to see that.
Yeah, no, Jaren, the thing with Jaren was he, like, again, like both of them did, that your stars just play like stars in the second half. Like they just bounce back. Like sometimes Jaren will have a bad first half, and usually he'll figure it out in the second half as long as he's not in foul trouble. And especially against AD for whatever reason, I think people really need to look. He usually matches up well against AD. Not every game. Usually in LA is where they usually have problems, which we'll get into that in a little bit, home and road. But when they play at home, like Jaren be giving it to AD, like he be battling with AD, like he be basically not neck and neck, but like it's not a big difference in play in terms of how they're making big impactful plays to win the game.
Yeah, definitely. And then, Xavier Tillman had a great game too. And he actually, I feel like he had, in the first half, he was matched up on AD more. I feel like they moved Jaren onto him more, kind of like down the stretch. But I think he did a good job of forcing AD into a lot of jumpers and everything. Because you look at his stats, I mean, he had a monster game, like 28 and 19, like 5 blocks, awesome game. But it felt like he wasn't able to have that same dominant kind of feel that even Ja did on the other end, just because he missed some jumpers that were some tough jumpers and he could never really get in that rhythm. And I give a lot of that to Xavier Tillman for forcing him into those shots, because that's really all you can ask for Anthony Davis. Like he's still a great mid-range shooter, but I'll take a Anthony Davis contested mid-range over him getting a post touch like 12 times a week, like every time, 7 days a week, twice on Sunday, whatever you want to say. He can take as many mid-range jumpers as he wants. And I think that was like the biggest thing that Xavier Tillman did in that game too. And then also giving you a double-double. Rebounding has been the biggest problem for them. And just to have him out there doing everything that he does, it's been awesome to kind of watch him bounce back. Because I know I saw your tweet too. You talking about a lot of people owe Xavier Tillman some apologies. And that's true.
Because my thing with what I was saying was because I think somebody said it under is like, what was your expectation of him? He's like, he's a real pro, and like he comes in when he's numbers called. I'm like, yes, that's what I was trying to say, because I feel like a lot of people earlier this year don't really realize, like, or not even just now, but or early in the year, but realize like X is a rhythm guy, and like if people don't remember, he hasn't really got consistent minutes since his rookie year. But when he got consistent minutes in an actual role, like he's going to get like 15, 20, 25 minutes a game, he's really solid. Like, and I'm not saying he's Steven Adams. Nobody's Steven Adams on the board. That's just not, but that's not my expectation for X. My expectation for X is to be a solid big. And he's been better than that. I mean, he had to go up against Embiid, Jokic, 80 in 3 straight games. Had basically matched up with them all 3 and played well against them. And the thing is, the reality of it is, when Adams is back, he probably is going to go back to get DNPs. Now I know they talked about maybe not, we'll see, but like he might have to go back to getting DNPs, but he's fine with that because he's a real pro. Like that's, I don't want to make this comparison too much yet. I mean, it's kind of like a joke, but like he's more. I'm not gonna say he's like a culture setter for us in a way of like I'm trying to think of somebody for a different team. Like maybe I guess you could say Miami, like Udonis, like in the sense of he's young, he's only like 23, but he's like sets the example of what you want for your.
This is the thing though. He's young, but he's like I feel like he's older than everybody on the team besides Steven
he's
Adams.
an old soul.
Like he got kids, like he's married, like all that other stuff that gets thrown in there. Like I feel like he's more mature, and I feel like that does help in the locker room. And this is the whole thing. Like I understand people saying, you know, maybe the Grizzlies should move on from him or stuff. And I get it if you were talking about the trade deadline, you know, he wasn't playing. I get it. But I will never be mad at having a guy like Xavier Tillman on the team. And that's what I'll continue to say. Because especially when he's not making a ton either. It's a guy you know that if he comes in, he's going to hustle, he's going to play defense, and then he might mess around and give you an 18-point double-double like he did against the Lakers. And it's like, if he's doing stuff like that, then it's hard to keep him off the court. And not to say that he's a given, like he's definitely going to be in the rotation, especially with playoff time coming up. But he's definitely a guy I have no problem with if something happens, you know, Jaren's in foul trouble or, you know, somebody turns an ankle or something in a playoff series, because who knows what can happen in a 7-game series. We saw what happened last year in both series. You know, there's a bunch of different storylines that kind of took over, people getting suspended, people getting hurt, whatever it was. So there's so many things that can happen. Having a guy like that that's just ready to come in whenever his name is called. And he's also willing to do stuff like, as a guy who is one of the older guys on this roster, as crazy as it sounds, at 23 years old, and in terms of experience of how long he's been on the team, is still willing to go down to the G League when he's getting DMPs and work on his game. And it's like stuff like that is why, you know, you missed the open 3. I can live with that. Like, that's fine, because I know that on the other end, he's going to hustle for rebounds. He's going to hustle for offensive rebounds on offense. He's going to give you probably 1 or 2 steals and a block every game, you know? And it's just like that kind of stuff. He's going to make an impact on the game regardless. And I just love to see kind of the way he's played. And then kind of moving on to the other game, which not to talk about this one as much because they kind of did what they were supposed to do against the Rockets. I mean, only 13 teams have made the mistake of losing to the Rockets this season. So, you know, it's good to not be one of those teams. I'll say that. It's good because that would have felt bad after that Lakers loss. So,
hey,
you know,
Rich Twitter would have been in a blaze if we lost that game. It would have been done. Oh my God. You want to see reactions? Oh my Lord. It would have been bad.
And it felt like they wanted to in the first half a little bit. It did.
Oh yeah. First half. I said it. I was like, yeah, they need to lock in. Like, I understand I think we was up maybe a point or something. It wasn't a lot. I was like, they need to lock in. Well, first off, I had a show to watch. Second, I'm like, let's get serious a little bit. Like, this is Houston. Like, and mind you, I like Jabari. Like, I like a few of their players, Sengun, Jabari, Tari Eason. Like, I like some of their players. I like them for real. Jalen Green. But let's be serious. They only won 13 games for a reason. Like, we need to put our foot on the gas. Like, we need to finish this off. Like, we need to rest guys, especially on the back-to-back. But, oh, yeah, you need to don't play around. They turned up in the third and fourth. Really, it was Desmond Bain. That's really who came through the play. He's like, yeah, he actually started really take a lot of threes, make them. Road Bain came back, per se, if you want to say that.
Road Bain has been, you know, that's it's so weird because this year it felt like it hasn't been the same. Just because the whole team as a whole has been so bad on the road. But it felt like the last couple years, it was really Desmond Bain that in those road games, he was kind of carrying them, like in a lot of those road games. I mean, if you look at it, I don't know if it's still the case, but I know at one point he had like the highest road 3-point percentage like to start a career ever. Like he was shooting like 48% from 3. Like it's ridiculous. It's like my career numbers. Like it doesn't seem like it should be real when you think about it. especially when you consider like the greatest shooters of all time shoot around 44, 43% max, and that's catch and shoot guys. You know what I mean? Like straight catch and shoot. And you're talking about this is a guy that is now adding, the flybys, which is his. I think that's my favorite part is just watching guys continue to because if it's so hard because you don't want to get caught in the flyby, but then if you don't contest it, he's going to make it too. So it's just it's so hard to try to defend that. But I just felt like he had an awesome game, and like you said, that third quarter, they ended up winning by 14. They won the third quarter by 14. So basically, that was the difference in the game. Is that third quarter? Same as the Lakers game. Third quarters good, fourth quarters have not been as good. And let's see if we can get some of that third quarter mojo and move it to the fourth quarter from now on. And I think they'll be good.
Yeah, they got to figure it out, man. Fourth quarters, man. It's not just players too. Players, coaches. I can get into it, but yeah, everybody got to figure it out. They got to understand, especially on the road. They got to figure it out.
That's and one reason why they got to figure it out is because we only got like 19, 20 games left until the playoffs. So it is getting to the point where it's down the stretch. Like you got to start looking at these games, these important games coming up. Like this is about seeding. This is about who you're going to be playing. So I wanted to look at a couple of possible Grizzlies playoff matchups. Now, because the West is so weird, there are a lot of potential first round matchups. Yeah. So I this is what I'll say, right? I don't think now that the Suns got KD, I don't see them falling back unless there's an injury. So we'll take them out of it. I still think the Warriors are going to be in the top 6. And then it's going to be between the Dallas and the Clippers for who is going to be that 7th team that's in the play-in. But out of those two teams, I think that like Dallas and the Clippers, those are the two teams. Not to say that the Grizzlies are scared of anybody in the first round. Obviously, I don't think they should necessarily be scared of anybody. I'm not saying that. But in terms of first round series, those are the two that bring the most difficulty, in my opinion, would be the Clippers and the Mavericks. Now, let's say something happens and you end up, I don't know, it takes the Suns a minute to get it in and, they drop down. Obviously, they would be a harder, but I don't see that happening. In terms of like in the realm of possibility, I think it would be Dallas and the Clippers would be the two most difficult matchups for them. And I still think they could beat either one of those teams, but it's because I think most of it, especially on the defensive end, I think they're a better defensive team. I think they match up better with the Clippers a little bit just because I don't know if they have two guys to match up with Luka and Kyrie. I think that might be the hardest part is having, where is Desmond Bane? Are you going to put Desmond Bane on Kyrie? Who is Ja going to guard? It has some of those matchups because that they're probably going to put Dylan Brooks on Luka. So you can get into all that other stuff. But I think the Clippers are the better matchup. I don't know what you think about it right now, but I think that out of those two, the Clippers would be a better matchup for the Grizzlies just overall.
Yeah, I think Clippers because they don't have size to guard Jaren or Adams. Really, because even though they got Plumlee, I think they got Plumlee.
They got Zubac. They got Zubac too.
Zubac, yeah, that too. I forget about Zubac. Yeah, they got both of them, but like I'm really not like Jaren eats against the Clippers. Like he's always eating against the Clippers, and then they can't stop Ja or Jaren, and let alone I don't even think Bane really has been able to really get his game off. Not because they're guarding him well, it's just because by the time either he hasn't been healthy for those games, or by the time he really gets going, Ja and Jaren already both got like 20, 25 points together. Like that's usually when I feel like when I go look back at old Ja and Jaren like games when they're going off together, usually against the Clippers. No disrespect to the Clippers, they're good, but like, yeah, I'd probably say Clippers is an easier matchup. Maybe because their offense also struggles like ours in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Because they have a lack of a real point guard. I know they got Westbrook, but even then, they struggle with half court execution and not because Paul George and Kawhi more so scores than they are playmakers, and they can make plays, but they're not guys.
That's not what they do though. Yeah,
you don't throw the ball to them and be like run your whole offense through them and create for everybody else. Like they usually get to their spots, and then if there's somebody helps, then they'll make the play. It's not like they're like, hey, let me get here to open up a shot for somebody else. It's not that. That's usually not their type of mindset going into it. So I probably would agree with that. I think, but even then with Dallas, I'm not necessarily that scared of them either. Not saying the Grizzlies are not unbeatable, because I think how high their variance is in terms of their low, bad, worst outcome and best outcome is very.
Wait, nah, we
Very
just need to go ahead and throw
big
this out
difference.
here. When it comes to the first round of the playoffs, besides maybe like I don't know if the Jazz sneak in and end up playing the Nuggets or something, any team can beat any team. Like when you look at the
Yep.
standings, because if you're talking about the 7th seed could have either Luka and Kyrie or Paul George and Kawhi Leonard on it. You know, like it's not like that's not going to be an easy series regardless of what you do. So when we're looking at all these series, like I still think, I mean, throughout the season, the Grizzlies have been better than those teams. Now, there's been a bunch of stuff with injuries and stuff like that. How many games have Kawhi and PG played together? You know, Kyrie just got traded, all that. So there's a lot of other stuff that goes into it. So could the Clippers or the Mavericks beat the Grizzlies in a playoff series? Yes, they could. But if the Grizzlies play at their best, I think that they're still a better team. And that's kind of the way that I look at it. Now, if they play at their worst, that's a different story because we've seen both of those teams throughout the season. And I think that's the biggest issue that a lot of people have. And the other thing is that a lot of the issues have risen up in the fourth quarter of games. Like we said earlier, and the fourth quarter is when you play more like you play in the playoffs, more half court game. Every possession matters. You know, let's be honest, people actually start playing defense because this is the NBA. A lot of times, the first half, sometimes they just running up and down the court. Like there's not a lot of defense being played. It's not like that in the playoffs. So it's going to be a lot more half court sets, a lot less like careless turnovers and all that. Like we even saw that last year. Besides the Warrior series, which they had a bunch of crazy turnovers, but even like just getting out and running off of those turnovers wasn't as easy. So they're going to have to figure out the half court stuff. But I still think when it comes to those two teams, those will be the hardest matchups. And they're probably also the two most likely matchups. I'd say it would be either the Mavericks or the Clippers. I'd say the Clippers more so than Dallas because I think Dallas is going to win more over the last stretch than the Clippers will. And no offense, but it's because they added Russell Westbrook. I don't know if anybody saw their game today, but the Clippers were playing in Golden State, and the Warriors literally just left Russell Westbrook at the top of the key, like he was a traffic, like he was not there. Like, and I mean, like there is not a dude within like 10 feet of this man, and he didn't shoot it either. And it's almost like, dude, like that's almost disrespectful. Like you got to shoot it
That's the
right
Ben
there. You
Simmons
know what I
treatment.
mean? He was
Yeah.
he was getting bent like he got the Ben Simmons treatment, and we've seen it as Grizzlies fans. We saw the Warriors did that exact same thing to Tony Allen in a playoff series. And it's like when you have a guy where you can basically just be like, you know, leave him over there and we
He
can
with
guard
us.
everybody. Yeah, you know what I mean?
He
Like
with
that
us. He with
that is
us.
a huge, I feel like that's a huge liability in a playoff series. And not to say that it's gonna completely derail the Clippers, but it's like it's something that I think it could. And I think it's also an advantage on the Grizzlies side because I mean, I guess you could say you got sometimes some teams have done that with Dylan Brooks a little bit, not to that extent that they did with Russ, but some teams have left Dylan like that. But you know, we've also seen Dylan have some games where if you leave him wide open and he's taking in rhythm shots, it's you know, he's not a horrible shooter. Now he's not a great shooter, but he can knock it down if he's in rhythm and he's taking good shots, you know, and it's I don't know if you can say the same about Russ. Even sometimes he takes good shots and they just haven't looked not like they did back in OKC and even in Washington. So I think that's one of the reasons why a series with the Clippers, as intriguing as it would be, and you know we know what happened the last time Kawhi played the Grizzlies in a playoff series too. He looked like a cyborg and all that, but we haven't seen that Kawhi in what 2 years now. I mean, you can talk about when
Yeah, fully healthy.
fully healthy. So I mean, we'll see. I know he's been turning it on, but it's really hard to really, it's so hard to really say what it's going to be with the Clippers. But I say those are probably the two most likely teams. Now I know the team that we were talking about that we hope this is going to sound so bad if they actually end up making it and then the Grizzlies end up losing. This is going to look so bad. But we were talking about it. if there's one team that the Grizzlies could hope to play, it would be the Jazz. If the
Yeah.
Jazz could somehow get the 7th seed, I don't know if that's going to happen. I still think the Jazz are probably going to end up with out because if the Pelicans end up getting Zion back, they're probably going to end up beating them in the play-in game. That's what I would say. But even the Jazz, which you look at like the West this year, is so crazy because it's like even the Jazz, you still got to deal with Lauri Markkanen, who's having an amazing season. I think like he's an all-star. Might make an all NBA team. Like probably
Maybe.
not, but it's like it's not completely out of the question. And they've had some struggles against the Jazz. They lost in Utah twice early in the year. Now I know one of those games, Ja didn't play. One of those games, Bane didn't play. All that. So you can always look at stuff like that. But I mean, that doesn't change the fact that they've lost in Utah twice this year. But when you look at that matchup, is there anything in particular that you look at, or is it more of just like you? For me, it's just more like they don't have a guy that I've seen be like the best, like one of the best players in the world in a playoff series. You know what I mean? Like everybody else in the West, besides like I guess the Kings and the Grizzlies, because I mean, you could say what Ja did in that Warrior series is pretty incredible. But it's like of teams where we've seen Jokic go into playoffs and be incredible. With the Suns, we've seen Booker and KD, we've seen all of that. With the Jazz, they're more like we don't really know what they're gonna be. Like they don't really got no superstars and stuff like that. So I think that's why in the playoffs, that's probably the easiest matchup that you could hope for. But because of how crazy the West is, I don't even know if they're gonna make it. Like they probably won't make it. And if they end up playing the Pelicans in the first round, that would also be a really difficult first round series too. So it's like, regardless of who they ended up playing, it's gonna be tough. Like every playoff series this year is gonna be super tough.
Yeah, but I prefer to play Jazz. And listen, I follow a Jazz fan too. He's really cool. I forgot his username right now, but yeah, if he hear this, yeah, I would love to play Jazz. I'm sorry. It's not because I don't like. I like some of the players they got. I think more so the question for me is like they don't really have I can't really name, like I can name players, but I can't name a consistent, like a first surefire. Give me their best 3-4 players like in an order. Like and outside of Lauri, like I know Lauri's their best player, but like I like Kessler, but some nights he can be your second best player, sometimes he can be your fourth best player on the team. Kelly Olynyk, Jordan Clarkson, like they got some solid players.
Colin Sexton, when he has played this year, has been pretty good.
Yeah, but you also got to think they lost depth too. They traded like 3-4 depth guys to the Lakers, basically for like a first round. Who was it? Vanderbilt, Beasley, Conley. They lost 3 rotation guys, like snap of the finger. So now you depend on Taylor Horton Tucker to really give you the same like replace the minutes of Mike Conley and like Beasley. Like I just don't believe in that. Like I can at least look at our roster and be like, I know who our best 3 players are, maybe 4 best, and I feel very confident in that. Like, I mean, I feel very confident in just what you said. I mean, we got John Morant. Now I know Ja been kind of coasting this. I'm gonna say coasting the season, but like his playoff resume is still. That's what I hold hope in. Like when them lights is bright, he show up usually. So I don't.
Hey, look, whenever you're on a list, when it's playoff games and you're talking about multiple 45-point playoff games, and you're on the list with LeBron James and Kobe Bryant and stuff like that, like your playoff resume is set when you are put in the realm of guys like that in terms of your first 2 or 3 years in the league, putting up numbers like that in playoff games. So like we know what we're gonna get out of Ja. It's really just gonna be about the other guys.
Yeah, and I was gonna say one more thing. He also averaged basically 40 against the eventual champs. Like he was like averaging like 30 in that series against Golden State. Like he's going crazy before he got hurt. Like they couldn't do anything with him. So
no, yeah, even in that game 3, I think he had like 33. Like I mean, they were getting blown out.
Oh, yeah.
But he wasn't getting blown out. He had like 33. So it was like they it's just gonna be about the other guys, being better. And I think Jaren being better this year is gonna help them a lot. And Jaren actually being a consistent guy that can get you a bucket is gonna be really important in these playoff series. That might actually be like the most of and Bane being fully healthy with that
Somewhat
back
healthy.
injury he had last year. Well, as healthy as he's gonna be for the rest,
Yeah,
as
yeah.
healthy he's gonna be.
Healthy is gonna be because of that
Yeah,
toe.
yeah, as healthy as you can hope. I mean, hey, healthy enough to put up 30 against the Rockets. I don't know how healthy you got to be to do that because it seems like a lot of people have been putting up numbers on them. But hey, he was healthy enough to do it last night. So let's hope that he can stay healthy enough to do it in the playoffs too. But now that we kind of got a couple of those teams out of the way, I'm gonna call this last part the fine and the west part of the show. Because in order for the Grizzlies to prove they are fine in the West, this is what they got a stretch right here, which is like if you want to be fine in the West, you got a chance to prove it right here. The two biggest Achilles heels this season for the Grizzlies have been road games and games on national TV. And they got 5 out of the next 6 on national TV and 4 out of the next 6 on the road, and they're all against teams in the West. So if there was any time to shush the doubters, look, hold up. You know what video I'm gonna talk about it. Nobody believes in you. What are you
Yeah.
prepared to do about it?
What are you prepared to do about it? That Michael,
What are you
yes.
prepared to do about it?
Oh
This
man.
is the time to lock in. You know, they started look, they gave him kind of an easy game to start the road trip for once. All the other road trips have started like in Denver or
Thank you,
something
NBA.
stupid.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but this is going to be an important stretch. You know, 2 more games against the Mavericks. They got blown out the last time they played the Mavericks. You know, they just beat the Nuggets at home. You got to go back to Denver, and now you got to play them on the road. Aaron Gordon's probably going to be back fully healthy. You play in the Lakers. LeBron is going to be out, but who knows what AD is going to be playing in the first the first half, first 2.5 quarters of that game were incredibly competitive, and that was still like it took a heroic Ja Morant performance in that third quarter to put them over the
And
top.
Russell
So
might
this
be back too.
and yeah,
Forgot to add
Russell
that.
might be back. So like these are all going to be like it's not often where you get this many games in a row against teams that are not only in the playoff picture, but they all of these teams are like fighting for their playoff lives. Like it's not even like, you know, besides the Nuggets, you know, they're the 1 seed. They are pretty much not locked in at the 1 seed, like they haven't clinched it, but it would take a pretty crazy collapse from them and then, you know, a team like the Grizzlies or a team like it would have to be the Kings would be the only team that really has other team that even has a chance would have to finish the season on an incredible run. So, you know, they've got it locked up. But you look at the Lakers, they're fighting for not only their season, but for like LeBron's legacy, Anthony, they're fighting for all kinds of stuff in LA. Both LA teams, you know, the Clippers, they're doing the same thing. The Mavericks, they're trying to, you know, stay out of the play-in. So it's like all of these games are going to be really important coming up, and it's going to have a big impact not just on the Grizzlies but on the entire Western. This is like this stretch is it's an important stretch for the Grizzlies, but it's an important stretch to watch for like the entire Western Conference too.
Yeah. The thing I've always said about the Grizzlies, I mean, obviously they got the same problems at home and the road, but it's more magnitude or magnified on the road because of your margin of error on the road is just less. And so, like with the Grizzlies being an inconsistent offensive team, inconsistent shooting team, inconsistent just offensively, and then obviously role players not playing as well on the road as at home. Their attention to detail and their focus has to be better on the road, and that's usually what happens. They're just not consistent with it because we saw in that Philly game they were good for 3 quarters, and then the fourth quarter they just let it go. And obviously, Ja didn't play well, but that's part of it. Is your stars have to play at even higher levels on the road, especially when your margin of error is slimmer. And also coaching, you can't have a lineup where you don't have Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson, or Desmond Bane out there, even if it's only for a minute or two, because that gave Philly a little bit of momentum in that game, even though they only score like maybe 4 or 5 points. It just gives them momentum because then you bring back your starters. You already average in terms of executing in the half court in the fourth quarter. So now the game is 1 or 2 possessions, and they're at home and they're hitting shots. Like it's just a bad storm. Like I could see that. I've seen it happen too many times where they've done that before, and even at home. But on the road they've done it more. Like during that, because people don't realize during that stretch where they were losing, majority of those games were on the road. Like they had like an 8-game, 7-game road trip and didn't win like one of those games. Like, and they lost I think they lost to Golden State, they lost to Minnesota, they lost to Lakers, Phoenix Suns. Like they lost to all of them on the road. So like I don't worry about the Grizzlies when they're at home. We're one of the best home teams in the league. Like, I think we're like 26-5, or like we're one of the top 3 home teams in the league. But on the road, we're like 5-6 games under 500. Like we gotta figure it out. They gotta figure it out. They gotta figure out how to play on the road, because if they want to win a championship like they say they won, you have to win games on the road. I can name last year's champions, Golden State. They won on the road. Toronto
in every series.
Toronto, they won on the road. Toronto, when they won championship, they won on the road. Last year, even Boston, when they went to the finals, in the conference finals, they beat Miami on the road. Like, you got to win on the road. I'm not saying you got to win every game on the road, but I'm not saying you got to be elite on the road, but you need to at least be average or 5-6 games over 500 on the road. Like, you got to be able to win the big road game. So they got to figure that out. That's my biggest thing for them to figure out. So if they win during this stretch, let's say they still got 3 road games for this trip, correct? Because it's a 4-game road trip. If they win 2, go 2-1, I'm satisfied. If they go 3-0, I might be a little bit more moved. I might be a little bit more impressed, especially because that Denver game, to me right now, as an optimistic fan, I am realistic, feels like a little bit of a loss. But I feel like they win the next 2. But they might win against Denver. I don't know yet. Like, again, I don't know. When they're on the road, I just have no hope, or I'm optimistic, but I'm very just pessimistic when they're on the road. Like, I don't know what to expect.
I mean,
be good.
That's what they've shown this season, though. I mean, they're 12-18 on the road. Like that. Like, you have to make your takes with what, like, they've shown that they're not good on the road. Also, the Nuggets are the only team in the NBA that are better than the Grizzlies at home. I think they're 28-4 at home. So it's like you have both of those point the Nuggets way. That's definitely going to be the toughest game of the trip. I mean, no question, or of this next stretch. You got the number 1 team. You got the possible MVP on the road, all that. But regardless, I think that this stretch, if it might not be the best stretch in terms of, the results in every game. Like, obviously, they had like the 11-game win streak, but this stretch of games might be the most exciting games. And we also know that they are going to be good or bad. It's going to move the needle on a national stand, because all of these games, not only are they national TV, they're not even like NBA TV, fake national TV. Like, we're talking, this is ESPN, TNT, 5,
back to back both times.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome to watch. 5 out of 6 on TV, when the Grizzlies used to maybe get 5 on TV the entire season. It's fun to see how far it's kind of come when it comes to that.
But yeah, I usually did say also, I did have a meme about the Grizzlies on national television. I joke a little bit, and it's like a meme of somebody saying, "Don't turn the lights off, they're too bright," because the Grizzlies seem to not have, for whatever reason, on the road or national television, they're just not that good. And I was just joking. And it was like early before they was like bad on the road, like 5-6 games under 500. But then every time they just keep doing it on that stuff, I'm like, man, like, this meme it keeps resurfacing, because I have to bring it up, because I'm like, dang, I was just trying to joke. But then I hate when jokes become reality. And so I just hope they can make me look stupid a little bit, because I don't want to have to bring that meme back up and we losing by 20 to Denver, then lose to LA by like 10, and then lose a heartbreaker to the Lakers. Like, I just don't want that. Especially, I think that's the night Powell gets his number retired. So it's like his jersey retired for the Lakers. So it's like, man, I'm just, please be a serious basketball team, Grizzlies. If they listening, please just be serious. That's all I ask. Just please be serious.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you as always, Alex. Alex came on. He's going to be the co-host now. It's going to be super exciting. I'm excited for everything we're doing over here at Bluff City Media. Thank you guys for listening. Remember to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and don't forget to sign up for the Bluff City Media Insider Pass, whether that is going to be monthly or yearly. It's going to be a lot of awesome stuff. If you get the yearly pass, you also get a t-shirt, and you got a lot of pretty cool options. I know they released all the merch and stuff like that on there. So a lot of cool stuff coming from Bluff City Media, and of course here on the Next Gen podcast. So for Alex Winton, I'm your host, Bryson Wright, and we are going to see y'all next week talking about some more Grizzlies stuff.